everyone, welcome back to Touch the Fire Twice. I'm Joshua, and I'm here today to do an in-depth sniff comparison review of the 18-ounce peanut butter waffle cone HomeWorx by Slatkin & Co. candle. Traditional, again, 18-ounce chrome lid. We all know it, we love it. In the sort of new label design for this year that some scents are coming in, which is the photo wraparound label with the band of white, the little bit of a script font there, and just the black and white candle name there, peanut butter waffle cone. Talk about this one a little bit. I did do a burn on it, really consistent, traditional, good quality burn with Slatkin & Co. with Slatkin & Co. and HomeWorx that we've come to expect vast majority of the time. And so I'll talk a little bit about sort of what I expected the scent to be based on the name and the imagery, and then what I actually think it smells like, and do a comparison to one candle. There's not a lot here to compare to, but there is one I think that's worth doing a sniff, side-by-side comparison on. So the idea, first of all, peanut butter waffle cone. I feel like in wax, people tend to either love or hate the idea of peanuts or peanut butter specifically. I think people see it sometimes more as like an ingredient versus, the star of the show. So if there's some sort of baked good that has nuts in it, like a little bit of walnuts in, an apple crumble, or a little bit of pecans in German chocolate cake with coconut and pecans, or something along those lines, any kind of either confectionery or literal kind of gourmand baked good, oftentimes you're gonna have nuts in it, and could be peanuts. But not everyone thinks of it as, oh, I want peanut butter specifically. But to have peanut butter as really a primary note in here that's not really specifically a baked good item or confectionery item. It's kind of like a couple of, this is almost like notes thrown together, as opposed to, I think no one eats a peanut butter waffle cone. They might eat a waffle cone with ice cream with a little bit of peanut butter sauce on top or something like that, right? But peanut butter waffle cone isn't like a specific gourmand bakery confectionery item itself, if that makes sense. So I was intrigued and confused a little bit with the name, to be frank. However, I love waffle cones. Like, get me in a Jenny's ice cream shop with a fresh waffle cone, like that scent of a waffle cone, a freshly baked waffle cone, whether it's cheap, it's whatever, I don't care. It is unmistakable. And so I was kind of excited by it, and like, well, it's different, and I like nutty scents, and I like to try different potentially weird things. So like many others, I nabbed it. So let's dig into the notes, and then I'll talk through what I sniff, the comparison, and the burn. So notes in here are brown sugar waffle cone, although there's no comma. So I think they're calling it a brown sugar waffle cone. I guess as opposed to like a cake cone, or I don't know, maybe there's a richness to using brown sugar in your waffle batter as opposed to just a typical white cane sugar. So, okay, I'll give it a little bit more caramelization perhaps. So if it is brown sugar waffle cone, cracked peanuts, caramel drizzle, and maple sugar. Again, interesting they're calling it maple sugar, not maple syrup. Of course, it would take maple syrup to create maple sugar, just kind of like cook it down and crystallize it. The same way that we can have coconut sugar or many different sugars from different sources. But again, some interesting notes there. So a waffle cone, peanuts, caramel drizzle, which could take many forms, either like a spun sugar, like you're making like the croquembouche, I believe it's called, where it's kind of a tower of puff pastry, like the choux pastry puffs, and then just like that sugar kind of all over. Or is it just like gloopy, gloppy, autumnal, like what you dip apples in, that's like a creamy, soft, buttery caramel? Hard to say. But when you look at the label here, it really is just like a pool of pieces of kind of waffle cone, almost like the Stroop waffles that are kind of popular now as a treat, and just like a really buttery, almost butterscotch looking kind of caramel sauce, I'll call it here, with again, just some kind of shelled, cracked peanuts they have there. And just a pretty kind of butterscotch canary yellow wax, which works. Whew. And when I sniffed this, immediately super, super authentic on the peanuts. This is it's not a raw peanut, but it's not a, Planters roasted in oil, heavy, salty. There's some saltiness here perhaps, but not like a kind of like the oil roasted peanut. It's really like a dry roasted peanut. So it's kind of hard, it's a bit drier, so a little bit lighter in color, like very, very directly strong. That's what I'm getting, which again, I like the authenticity there. And behind that, I'm like, okay, maple sugar, it's not maple specifically to me, so I wouldn't call out that. I'll get to the sweetness that I get in here, because there's a lot of sweetness that I'm getting, but it's very specific, and it's not listed in here. And I actually think there's a perfect name for this candle of exactly what I'm sniffing and they didn't use. And I will say there's, when it comes to caramel drizzle, okay, sure, but I'll get to that in a second. The brown sugar, also get to that in a second. But the waffle cone, there's no waffle cone in here whatsoever for me. And you're gonna smell waffle cones and you know exactly what that smells like. I get none of that in here, which is fine because I think what I smell, I like. But it's not an accurate name. It's just that's a very specific scent that I think can show up in wax and home fragrance, but doesn't here. So I'm a little bit perplexed why they used waffle cone there. Maybe they thought that that would sell better than what I think the name should have been, which is peanut brittle. Straight up. I don't smell peanut butter. Funnily enough, cracked peanuts are in the notes. Doesn't say peanut butter, though the name is peanut butter. Granted, peanut butter is just, pulverized peanuts until they, release the oils and become peanut butter. But they say cracked peanuts, they don't say ground peanuts. And I think that these notes are half correct as far as, is there brown sugar in here? Yes. Are there cracked peanuts in here? Yes. Caramel drizzle? Yes. Perhaps some maple? No, there's no maple scent in here. Maple is a very aggressive scent. Like when you have those maple, like little maple leaf candies, that tastes like maple. I don't get maple in here either. To me, it is peanut brittle. If you're familiar, I feel like it's kind of an old-timey, certainly like a ye old kind of candy that I know my grandfather used to like peanut brittle. Peanut brittle is essentially a candy confectionery that is made, you make a caramel to like a hard crack. So that means you're putting like water and sugar and you do some corn syrup, I think, and you're essentially boiling that. You throw in your roasted or even raw cracked peanuts as they list here. And then at that point, you usually will add in some butter, which, okay, that's gonna sugar cooked with butter or heavy cream or some sort of dairy is caramel. And then you also actually add baking soda, which fluffs it up. It makes it bubble, makes it fizz. It essentially, for all intents and purposes, aerates it. And it puffs up, and then you lay it on a tray or a granite counter or cold marble or a baking tray with some parchment paper, oil and parchment paper, and it hardens and you're able to snap it. But because it had that, the butter added and you had the baking soda added to sort of kind of aerate it and make it foam up, it's got a bit of an aeration to it where it's not like trying to bite into like a sucker or a hard lollipop. It is softer where because it's aerated. It's still hard, but softer. I think most people know what peanut brittle is, right? And that is exactly what this candle is. No question, this candle is peanut brittle. Nothing more, nothing less. And that's fine. I like it. I know Bath & Body Works had some sort of peanut brittle candle. I didn't purchase it. I think when I remember smelling it, it didn't actually smell like peanut brittle to me. It had a lot of other weirdness going on, and they were like using a name that wasn't right. They're using a name here that's not right. And they could add a little more notes: buttery caramel, cracked peanuts, sugar crystals, and vanilla bean. And that would be a perfect list of notes. Because to me, I smell the dryness of the peanuts and that kind of almost honeyed sweetness, that intense like nectar-y, kind of golden nectar sweetness that the corn syrup and the cooked sugar with that butter and some vanilla imparts to make that hard crack of that slightly aerated hard candy confection. There is one other layer on top of this. I almost hesitate to say it because I don't want anyone to think that that's like a primary note in this, but there's something that almost is like a slightest bit of a smoky note. Don't run with that, but like not a smoked caramel or something, but like almost towards like when you get like a nice, like a burnt caramel, which is used sometimes in baked goods or in confections, that like the same way that like salted whatever was in the past, like I don't want a salty thing, and then people ate it and like, oh my God, I love salty everything, salted caramel, salted chocolate, salted whatever. Burnt can also be good when it's just singed, almost like a brown butter. And I get a little bit of that, like almost like the butter that was added to this, like was on the edge of being like a brown butter or almost burning in that hot, nearly boiling sugar peanut mixture. But it's almost like the same way that when you're making, for instance, like Mexican rice, you actually have oil in the pan, you throw in the dry rice, you stir it, and you toast it. So it's more of a toasted, that's what I'm going for. It's not burnt, but more of a toasted note to this. So toasted peanut brittle, toasted caramel peanut brittle. I think that would be a name that would work, because there is that. Thank you for coming with me on that journey from smoked to burnt to toasted. Absolutely is what I want to say is toasted. Whether that's the caramel or, or the sugar or the peanuts themselves, there's certainly a little bit of a top note there of, or maybe base note actually, of like toasted, which some people could interpret maybe as burnt. I think it's nice. It's a weird one in the sense that, similar to the Sunday morning cereal, I don't know when specifically I would crave it, because I like baked items or gourmands in home fragrance. I don't often want specifically candy or confections. So it's interesting to see when I want to burn this, but it is warm, it's sweet, it's comforting, it smells like you're in like a confectionery. Let's call it toasted vanilla. No, not vanilla. Not in the name. Though in the notes, yes, like vanilla bean. Toasted peanut brittle. That's what this is for me. I would love to hear what everybody else thinks. If that is what you thought, or not, if you're saying like, oh, that's totally it, or if you're like, absolutely not, Josh, it is completely XYZ. I would love to hear. And that's what's so interesting about doing reviews and just in the fragrance community, hearing what everyone has to think. So that's my thought on this. If you like peanut brittle, if you like confectionery scents, go for it. If you want specifically peanut butter, oh gosh, here I'm getting all the way through and I didn't even do my comparison, excuse me. Roasted pumpkin butter. A lot of folks call this peanut butter. I disagree. To me, it is pepitas or pumpkin seeds ground up, which can turn into a pumpkin seed butter. I'm comparing it only again because it's got some similarities and people have called that out in the past, but this is whipped pumpkin, toasted cinnamon, creamy vanilla butter, and for me, roasted pumpkin seeds ground up. They're only this, there's much more vanilla in here actually, and kind of a whipped sweetness. The only similarity is the nutty toastedness, but this has a sweeter, hard candy caramel to it. And this one is more of a whipped feeling, those spices, the cinnamon, and sort of that like creamy pumpkin butter, if you just like cook down pumpkin and turn it into like pumpkin butter, apple butter, that sort of thing. So whether you can call it an official comparison, maybe not, but still closest one I had in my collection to compare to. Anyhow, that is your peanut butter waffle cone, aka toasted peanut brittle. So let me know what you think, and until next time, take care.